We saw in our previous examples that tactical motives, they occur in all sorts of positions. We saw tactical motives born out of strategic aspects in the position. We saw tactical motives born out of the weakness of opponent's king. We saw in my game against Ye tactical motives born out of need. And now in this position, my game against Al-Machine, this is an example of the tactical attempt born out of sportive necessity, because it was a knockout tournament. I had won the first game with black against Zoltan, and now he desperately needed to win to stay in the match. And in this position, white is pawn up, but black could actually try simply maybe by doubling on the d file, win the pawn back. But it would just bring the game closer to a draw. And we remember black has to win. So although the position maybe does not give sufficient positional material for tactics to work, sometimes a player just tries to make the tactics work because there is no choice. And in this position, using the fact that this bishop could theoretically become very strong, and just using the necessity to attack the king on g1, black concocted exchange sacrifice on e4. And after rook takes e4, rook d5. At first it even seems that his strategy might succeed. White rook on e4 is hanging. White rook on d1 is hanging. Queen is hanging. And if I take on d5, bishop d5, rook takes d5, it might look as if my material is sufficient, but after queen takes b2, in fact, because of the weakness of the first rank, pawn hanging on a2, and completely discoordinated rooks, I will be simply losing this ending. And after rook d4, which is the only move, rook g5, he finally executed what he was dreaming of in the very beginning. He activated his bishop, and now it seems that he's crashing through on the king side. In fact, I cannot defend the pawn on g2 comfortably because of all these pins. And I also do not want to play g3 and to allow queen f3 with horrible threats along the same diagonal. And now we will see also tactics working in return. That is, black did a certain tactical operation, created threats, and now white needs his own resources to get out of trouble. Now, what could be the thoughts which somehow saved this game for white? How was I thinking? Well, first of all, I saw, and it is in fact very important, that there is no reason to panic. That in fact, black's threats are not so very serious, or at least they're not immediately killing. In fact, if now black was to move, he would have to maybe take on g2, but then I would still have king f1. Black would probably maybe take on h2, but in fact, black doesn't threaten anything forced, which is always nice to know. So white has a bit of time to develop his own counterplay. And what could be objects of his counterplay? Well, I saw that in order to be successful, I have to get at black's king on g7. How can I do this? With the pieces I have at my disposal, I can only get him on this diagonal with my queen. So, and then the idea becomes pretty clear. I go rook f4, rook takes g2, king f1. And now, in order to proceed with his attacking plans, in order to create the ideas of rook g1 and so on, black plays queen g5. Now, white is exchange up, black has a pawn for this very serious threat, So white should succeed first. White should come first, and now we already know how to do it. We see that black king is vulnerable on g7. Now it is pretty naked actually, and we see what kind of opportunities we have. We check our checks first. Rook takes f7, king takes f7. Now we see that in fact g5 is protected. We check on d7. It goes queen e7, and we see we have checks no more. So this was unsatisfactory. We try something else. We go queen c3 check. See that he can go back. And now to our amazement, we find that c8 is covered and d8 is covered after rook d8, queen d8, and that basically this would be the end of our attack. And returning to this position, we try queen d4, and now we see that this is more serious. After king g8, we can go queen d8 check, exchanging queens, and basically remaining with exchange up in the endgame, which certainly could not satisfy black. After king h7, we go rook f7, followed by mate. After king h6, we go queen h8 mate. So his only move is f6. And now well acquainted with the way a player thinks in such positions, we check queen d7 first, king h6, and we do not have any checks anymore. And after queen b7, rook g1 check, king e2, rook takes d1, king takes d1, queen f4, we see that we get a pretty bad ending with pawn down, and black would probably win. And after f6, and of course basically we should do this some moves earlier, and we should calculate all this in advance to be able to go for this. We just have to try some other checks, and that's how basically queen takes f6 should occur to you. Just another check white has at his disposal. And now after queen takes f6, rook d7 check. And now wherever black goes with his king, I pick up the full queen. He can get nothing for it. King h6, rook takes f6, and now using some checks, some tactical means, counter attacking the black's king. Basically one got what one wanted to get, attacking these pieces, basically getting the endgame with exchange up, no counterplay, and even black has to put some effort to not to lose another piece at once. So Zoltan Almashi just resigned in this position, and I could thus qualify for the next round. In order to understand what happened in this position, we return a bit, and we see that in the position where the opponent already has pretty serious threats connected to checks which could become decisive, we should remember that often the counterplay involves checking moves. That is, the counterplay should be quick and very concrete, and this guideline helps us to find the resources. And if we return to the very beginning, we see that tactics can very often appear where there are no tactics, just because our opponent might be willing to win the game at any cost, or as it was in this case, just must win the game at any cost to remain in the tournament. And after this very interesting example, we proceed our work.